Independent Electoral Commission, that's the IEC, could face problems ahead of next year's elections in the form of two court case outcomes. This as the constitutionality of some aspects of the Electoral Act are being challenged at the moment. For more on how this could affect the vote, we're joined by the IEC CEO, Mr. Masego Sheburi. A very good evening to you, sir. Grateful for your time. Always good to speak to you. So, the issue of these court cases, and it's important to stress that these are not cases brought against the IEC, but they have required agility on your part as the administrators, for all intents and purposes, of this country's elections. And you say that's required agility, but how much more agile have you now had to be going into 2024 versus, let's say, 2021 and 2019?
Good evening, Tembegile. 2021 was a once-in-a-lifetime election, we hope. For 2024, we are planning on the basis that an electoral system that excludes independent is not constitutionally permissible. That's the basis on which we are planning. We know there are already two cases. They do not challenge the inclusion of the independents, but rather, as we understand it, the applicants want to maximize the participation of independent candidates. We have said to court that we stand ready to deliver the election. We understand an election must happen before August next year. However, we need a judgment by the end of September in order to adjust our systems to accommodate whatever decision that the court comes up with.
So whatever decision we get then from the Constitutional Court, how much lead-in time do you have, or would you need to be able to run a credible process? You've touched on it slightly, but perhaps unpack for us what needs to happen in the months between when the court pronounces on the case and when we would ultimately have to run this election by August next year.
As we understand, there are three matters at issue. The first one is the split or how you allocate the 400 seats in the National Assembly. On that aspect, we should be able to accommodate on our system whatever a split the court authorizes. The second...
Mr. Sheburi, I think you've now muted yourself. Let's see if we've got you back.
Of supporters.
You're back with us there.
As a way of demonstrating support. Pardon?
We had lost you for a moment because you were muted. Perhaps you could take your response from the top. You were just talking about what's going to be required from you from when the court makes its pronouncement to the deadline for when we have to run this election, which is August next year.
Okay. As we understand it, there are three matters before the court. The first one is the split of the seats in the National Assembly. We all know that there are 400 seats in the National Assembly. The Act determines that those seats will be split 200 in the regions and 200 to restore proportionality. The applicants want the court to order that those seats are split 350 in the regions and 50 to restore proportionality. We think we can accommodate that split in our system. However, it doesn't end there. There are other consequential amendments that Parliament would need to pass if the court authorizes that 350 as opposed to a 200-200 split. As it relates to the two other challenges, we think we can accommodate those in our system without a lot of challenge if the court makes those determinations.
How high is the probability, the possibility, that we may not have our ducks in a row, or the IEC may not be able to get its ducks in a row before the deadline of August to hold the national elections, and would we need a postponement?
We are not contemplating a postponement. As you know, in 2021, the Apex Court said a general election may never be deferred beyond the 90 days after the end of term. We are not contemplating that scenario. We are planning on an election happening within the constitutionally defined time frame. To that end, we have asked the court that whatever decision is made, would appreciate if we get that decision no later than the end of September, so that we can make sure that we can still deliver an election before August with whatever changes that the court authorizes.
For all intents and purposes, it sounds as though 2024 will be the most historic election in this country since 1994, and quite apt perhaps because it will mark 30 years of this country's democracy.
Indeed, and for the first time you'll have a new phenomenon, i.e. the participation of persons not associated with political parties. So it is going to be indeed a very interesting election.
But it may also come with an interesting issue for the IEC, where you may see, with the entrance of independents and other players in the political sphere, perhaps a record number of complaints, because as we're seeing now, everyone, be it the traditional well-established political parties and the independents, everyone is already fighting for their stake and their best interest.
Indeed, Tembekile, if you consider a similar election in 2019, we had in excess of 15,000 contestants vying for a number of 830 seats. So in each election, the number of those who do not get seats will outnumber the number of those who were successful. And with that will come complaints that elections were either not free or fair, or that the odds were stacked against certain participants. On our part, we are planning on having a system that impacts contestants in the same way. We have also finalized the design element of our ballot paper, because we think that will be the biggest challenge for this election, accommodating the ultimate number of contestants that meet the requirement to contest on a ballot paper in such a way that voters can still use that ballot paper to make a mark, to make a choice for the correct party, and not miscast their ballots.
Is this having an impact at all on the IEC's ability to train workers for the election next year? Because a lot goes into the running of an election. You've got people at national, provincial, as well as other lower levels, all the way up to the people who will be at the voting station when we all walk in to cast our ballots.
Indeed, and our approach has been that this requires retraining for all of us at national, at provincial level, at municipal level, but more importantly, the over 200,000 staff that we employ on voting day at voting station to administer the votes. We have started the recruitment, we have started the training, and we think that come election day, all the 23,300 voting stations in the country, when they open, they'll open with men and women who are able to administer the electoral scheme as has been authorized by Parliament.
IEC Deputy CEO, Mr. Masego Sheburi, good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight.